Hi everybody, it's Az here from Heel vs Babyface with another edition of AzChats focused on the upcoming World of Warcraft expansion, Warlords of Draenor. Now if you're new to AzChats, and I'm sorry for repeating myself if you're not, but if you're new, this is a feast for your ears, not for your eyes. So if you've got something that you need to get on with the house, you know, darning your socks, putting the cat into the washing machine, stuff like that, simply crank up the volume so you can hear me and go forth and do something productive. That wasn't quite how it's meant to say. Never mind. But I have discovered that a lot of people tend to get quite a bit of housework done while listening, which is, you know, there you go, multitasking. Now today I'm going to focus on how gear is going to change in Warlords of Draenor, because believe me, it's getting a drastic overhaul. And please post in the comments below what your thoughts and feelings are on this. I will make my thoughts and feelings perfectly well known throughout the course of this video. So let's look at gear, how it is today. If you're in a raid, you have your regular pieces of epic gear which drop, and then you have your tier sets which drop as well. Now we get the tier tokens, we can hand the tier tokens in and get ourselves something that's specific to the spec which we are currently playing. So for example, if I'm playing a paladin and I am a healer, I could get a token at the moment, take it to the vendor and turn it in for the intellect plate gear, because I want to heal with this. Or if I've already got my full tier set, then I may choose to either just sell the token or hand into a vendor for another piece of gear, maybe to get my tank set going, or maybe to get my DPS set going. So there's certain options in that way at the moment. And also the regular gear tends to be made up of 2 primary stats and then 2 secondary stats. So the primary stat is your agility, your strength, your intellect, and also stamina. They're your primary stats. So those are what they focus on. And then your secondary stats at the moment, we have crit, haste, mastery, hit, expertise, parry, dodge, yada yada yada. They're the secondary stats. Sometimes gear can come with multiple gem slots. 1 gem slot, 3 gem slots, 2 gem slots, multiple gem slots. And when you put gems into these pieces, you get yourself a nice little set bonus. Okay, so we all know how gear works right now. So why have I decided to open up with this? Well, that is going to change quite a lot in Warlords of Draenor. And I personally, after initially hearing the thoughts on how they'd like gear to go forward, very excited about this. I'm very excited about this at all. Now, first of all, gear is going to get separated into 2 lots. And for the sake of this video, I'm going to call them armor and accessories. Now, your armor pieces are going to consist of your head, your shoulders, your chest piece, your bracers, your gloves, your belt, your legs, and also your booties. Okay? The accessories are going to be your neck, your cloak, your rings, and your trinkets, as well as your weaponry. So there we go. That's how things are broken up into armor and accessories, and I'm putting the weapon in the accessories tab there. So first of all, how is the armor going to work for your regular headpiece, shoulders, chest, bracers, gloves, waist, legs, and also booties? Well, it's going to get a massive, massive overhaul. And I'm very excited about this. You're always going to get your stamina and your primary stat. So you're still going to get stamina, intellect, stamina, agility, stamina, and strength. You're always going to get that. But when it comes to secondary stats, things are going to change quite drastically, because 4 secondary stats are being removed from the game completely. Hit, gone. Most likely gone on all gear in the game. Expertise, exactly the same. Gone. Dodge, gone. Parry, gone. Hit, expertise, dodge, parry. All 4 of those stats are being removed in Warlords of Draenor. Okay? Crit, haste, mastery are still staying, but we are getting multiple different secondary stats which could complement gear. And this includes things like readiness, amplify, which will increase, you know, a certain spell or ability, multi-strike, and other potential things as well. But they're the ones which are being touted at the moment. Now, you notice that amplify, I think, and also multi-strike, definitely multi-strike anyway, are currently on the Siege of Orgrimmar trinkets. So it's something that Blizz are already beginning to test out. And I really like these new trinkets in Siege of Orgrimmar. I like the fact that they have something different about them now, instead of just, you know, you can get 2,000 intellect on this trinket and you have a chance to proc 3,000 crit for 20 seconds. To me, it just gets a little bit boring, you know? So when they bring in these additional new secondary stats, multi-strike, amplify, readiness, that could lead to some very interesting pieces of gear, because they will be random. Now, you can't think, okay, I really like the idea of multi-strike, I'm going to reforge all my gear to multi-strike, so I've got a chance of hitting a target and then dealing X% more damage to that target because of my multi-strike percentage. No. Why? Because reforging is also gone in Warlords of Draenor, being removed from the game as well. So whatever stats you get on your brand new pieces of gear, that is how it will roll. Now, before anyone panics, if you've bought the Expedition Yak like myself, and you're like, but I've got a reforge and it costs me 120 grand. Don't panic, they're going to replace the Reforger with something else. The kind of 2 leading things at the minute are either going to be a Transmogger instead, or potentially an item upgrader. They're kind of like the 2 leading ideas at the moment from Blizz. Of course, all of this is subject to change. Now then, on top of this, we have primary stats, we have secondary stats. We may also, this is not a given, but you may also get a tertiary stat as well. What does that mean? It means a 3rd stat. You know, to us common folk, just means you can get an additional 3rd stat. Now this can consist of things like movement speed buff, lifesteal, avoidance, which will actually lower the amount of AoE damage that you take, cleave, sturdiness. So there's some very interesting stats coming into the World of Warcraft. Now then, gear is going to drop more often, allegedly. Okay, and this is how they're trying to balance getting the gear that you want versus the gear that's dropped. Because, let's just say for argument's sake, 2 chest pieces drop in the raid that I'm doing. I'm doing normal, whatever it is, in Warlords of Draenor. We kill a boss, 2 chest pieces drop. And they're for me, my Warlock. Yay! So, I've got these cloth pieces of gear, which have their primary stats. They have stamina and they have intellect. They have their secondary stats, which of course will now no longer have the 4 which I've mentioned. Hit, expertise, dodge, parry. So in that instance, they wouldn't have hit on it. That's gone. Let's just say, for the argument's sake of this video, it has haste and also multi-strike as its secondary stat, but no tertiary stat, no 3rd stat. That's the first chess piece. Whereas the second chess piece that drops has stamina, intellect as its primary stats, and then it has crit and amplify, and also lifesteal as its 3rd stat. Do you see how that can operate? So let's just say, for argument's sake, I win the first chess piece because I'm in a raid and I'm using DKP or something like that. I'm in a guild group and I'm using DKP. And I managed to win the first chess piece without the tertiary stat, without the third stat, and one of my guildies wins the second one. So although I get my piece of gear, I can still get the same piece of gear, but better. Because it could come with an additional stat on it, or something like that. Now, at the moment, we also have Thunderforged items in the game, and we also have Warforged items in the game, which are slightly better versions of the current piece of gear that may drop from that boss. It applies here too. This is what's going to happen in Warlords of Draenor. So, once more, because Reforging has been removed from the game in Warlords of Draenor 2. When you get your stats, that's how it stays. You can't reforge into them. Therefore, you can't just say, right, I'm going to build myself a big piece of kit that's centered all around life stealing. No, that's going to take a lot of hard work to do, because you're going to be battering that boss, battering that boss, battering that boss, trying to get the specific drop of the item. And then on top of that, you're trying to get that lifesteal stat to go on the bottom of it as well. So you can't just say, I'm going to build up a movement speed set, I'm going to build up a lifesteal set, and have it done in next to no time. That's got to take some serious RNG. You don't want to know what I was doing with my hand there. It's got to take some serious RNG luck for that to happen. Okay, so that's how you can look to build up a set, but how it's not going to take 5 minutes to do. So we've got primary stats, secondary stats, and we've also got tertiary stats, which have something a little bit more interesting than just what we have today. Let's face it, things like expertise and hit are boring as chuff, because we have to make sure, or if you want to maximize your damage, of course, you have to make sure that you first of all get to your relative hit caps or expertise caps. Then you get to play with your other stats. So, for argument's sake, if I'm on my warrior and I want crit, 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 first of all I've got to make sure my hit's sorted. Then I've got to make sure that my expertise is sorted. Then I can start going, yay, crit, 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 crit. So now, because they're all gone, you can have some very intriguing builds when it comes to your gear. Now then, let me just shift on to tier gear, because as I mentioned earlier, currently we get tier tokens. And when we get the tier tokens, we hand them in, and we get the specific piece of gear that we want, whether it be the healing set for the paladin, whether it be the DPS set for the paladin, or whether it be the tanking set for the paladin. That's changed. Now, if you win a piece of tier set, that tier set will change based on what spec you're in. So if I win tier shoulders, and I'm going to go with a hunter as an example here. If I get a piece of tier shoulders as a hunter, and I'm a marksman hunter, it's going to have X stats. It's going to have stamina, it's going to have agility, and it's going to have its additional stats, secondary stats, maybe tertiary stats, but the tertiary stats are going to be very difficult to get. Okay. So, I suddenly want to go from marksmanship into survival. That could change the set bonus based on the spec that I'm in. So it's not like I win the shoulders and the set bonus is just like, right, if you're in such set you get that, such set you get that. Like we have now. You know, you'll find with like warlocks, you'll say, increases the damage of corruption by 5%, increases the damage of immolate by 10%, increases the blah 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 blah. No. What's going to happen now is your set bonuses are going to be specific to your spec, whether you're a healer, a tank, a DPS, but you are not having to change out your tier gear for it. You still have the same tier on, it will just change depending what spec you are in. Personally, that sounds amazeballs to me. That sounds very, very interesting indeed. Because if the process of what we've just discussed also applies to the tier gear, so if there's the potential to proc tertiary stats from the tier gear, we can actually theoretically improve on the tier gear that we currently wear with more tier gear. I find that really intriguing indeed. You get one set of shoulders 1 week, you know, you've got the stats which it gives you. That's set in stone. But 3 weeks later, you win some more shoulders and suddenly you get a tertiary stat. Does that change everything up for you? Or you get some different stats which you feel is more conducive to your class. You know, you get mastery, but you get, I don't know, amplify. You know, yada, yada, yada. So it can be very intriguing how you start to develop your own tier sets. And we'll actually start to give tier sets, in my eyes anyway, let me know what you think, a little bit of differential. Because we're currently all the same. We currently all have the same stats on our tier gear, depending on what class we play. But this way, we can actually have, potentially, some variation within the tier sets. How cool is that? I think that's amazing. I personally think that's absolutely amazing. Now, let's move to the accessories, which I've mentioned include your weapons, your neck piece, your cloak, your rings, and your trinkets. They're now getting away with how they're just set out as is now. So normally they're like stamina, intellect, primary stats, secondary stats, crit, haste. No, they're kind of getting away with that. That's gone. They're doing away with it. They're moving away. Now, they probably want to have stamina and a primary stat on the weapon, because that's kind of like classic WoW, you know. Your weaponry's got stamina, intellect, stamina, agility, stamina, and strength. But that's probably the only piece of gear that will retain that. On top of it, you're going to get things like spell power. You're going to get things like spirit. You're going to get things like additional armor bonuses. So you know how you used to get the green armor bonus, the additional bonus to armor? That's going to come in as a secondary stat for these things. But of course, let's say a neck piece drops and it's got spell power on. I could be like, yes, I'm a warlock, that's for me. But the same necklace drops and it's got spell power and spirit on it. I don't need spirit. Spirit's useless for me. That suddenly becomes a healer item now. So the same piece of gear, once more, can be useful to do different classes depending on what stat procs from the item. And again, I find that vastly, vastly more interesting than what we have. Now, of course, all these things are subject to change. These are just little bits of tidbits which are coming out from Blizzard at the moment. And they could change the stats, they could get rid of avoidance, they could get rid of amplify, they could swap it with other things, yada yada yada. But I really like the concept of what they're playing with here. And I'm pretty sure, come release date, not all make it in. But just as a concept, so far, I'm really liking that. Now, let's move on to something else. And let's move on to gemming. Because jewel crafting, along with these items, is getting a big overhaul come Warlords of Draenor as well. Because getting a gem slot on a piece of gear is going to be rare. Very, very rare indeed. But when you do find a piece of gear which has a gem slot, you're only going to get the one. That's it. The one gem slot, full stop, that's it. It's not going to be 2 gems, 3 gems, it's just the one. But the gem that goes inside of it is going to be significantly more powerful than it is today. Okay? Now, there won't be any bonus for gemming either. It will literally be a gem slot and you put the gem in. And Blizzard are toying with the idea that they're still going to keep the colour coordination. So if it's a red gem slot, you've got to put a red gem in, or an orange gem, etc, etc, etc. They might even streamline that to just the primary, you don't know. We could just have red, you know, yellow, da 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 da, etc, etc, blue, yada yada yada. So they might decide to actually change that up as well. So there'll be no set bonus for putting, or no, you know, additional bonus for putting the gem in, but the gem that you put in will be significantly more powerful. Now, what effect this has on jewel crafting has yet to be seen, but as we've learned from Mr. Pandaria, jewel crafters can do much more than just making jewels. The likelihood is they'll probably shift the focus onto them crafting accessories, possibly trinkets on top of what they do now. They have done trinkets in the past, of course, but this has not been something that was really toyed with Mists. Mounts, they've done plenty of mounts in Mists as well. So, jewel crafters, don't panic. I still think you're being very good hands as to where, I'm a jewel crafter on my Warlock, where it will go in Warlords of Draenor. But this is very, very interesting indeed. So, I'm going to wrap it up. This is how the proposed aspect for gear is in Warlords of Draenor. What do you think? What do you think to this? Do you think it sounds exciting? Do you think it sounds confusing? Do you think it will work? Do you think it won't work? But if you do have a point of view, please do mention what your argument is. Don't say, I don't like this. You know, come on, tell me what scares you about it. And of course, because all this is subject to change, and I'm pretty sure some of it will make its way in, some of it won't, don't get all stressed about it, people. Don't get all stressed about it. Don't get don't be like that. But please do put your thoughts, your feelings, your concerns and your arguments down below as to what you feel. Personally, I think once more it's another great idea coming out for Warlords of Draenor. And I think there have been so many good ideas coming out thus far for Warlords. I am just getting more and more psyched the more that I hear. I significantly believe Blizzard are moving in the right direction. I think they've learnt from the mistakes of Kata. I think they've learnt from the mistakes of Mr. Pandaria. And they're making a vast, vast effort to make the game more interesting, more exciting, more fulfilling, which is another great F word to use, alongside fun, Blizz. Please never forget the fun. But yes, comments in the boxes below. I hope you enjoyed the vid. Please do like, comment and subscribe to my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook and also twitch.tv/Heal versus Babyface for live streaming. I shall be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care, everybody. Bye bye.